It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. Margaret Chen, a 52-year-old veteran nurse from Richmond, Virginia, was driving home from her late shift at the VA hospital, the same route she'd taken for 23 years. The rain was coming down hard. Most people would have kept driving past the overturned SUV on the shoulder. But Margaret wasn't most people. She'd spent 3 decades as a trauma nurse, 2 tours in Iraq as a combat medic before that, when she pulled over and saw the Virginia State Trooper unconscious behind the wheel. She had no idea this moment would unravel a 15-year-old mystery that connected both their lives forever. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like and share, so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. This is the true story of one decision, one night, and one woman who refused to leave a fallen officer behind. Margaret's Honda Civic was the only car on Route 460 that night. The storm had driven everyone else off the roads, but Margaret had driven through worse sandstorms in Fallujah, convoy routes under fire. A little Virginia rain wasn't going to stop her. Then she saw it. Flashing lights, barely visible through the downpour. An SUV Virginia State Police flipped on its side, smoke rising from the hood. Her first instinct was to call 911. She did. No signal. The mountains blocked everything out here. Her second instinct was to assess the situation. Combat medic training never leaves you. She grabbed her emergency medical kit from the trunk, the one she'd kept stocked since retiring from the Army Reserve 5 years ago. Her husband, David, used to joke about it. Who keeps trauma supplies in their car, Maggie? Someone who's seen what happens when you don't, she'd always reply. The driver's side door was crushed. Margaret had to crawl through the shattered passenger window. Inside, she found Virginia State Trooper Jessica Martinez, 28 years old, unconscious, severe head trauma, and a deep laceration across her left arm. Blood. So much blood. Margaret checked for a pulse. Weak, but there. Breathing shallow. Irregular. She had maybe 10 minutes before blood loss became critical. The car smelled like gasoline. Margaret knew what that meant. She had to move fast. Margaret's hands moved on autopilot. 30 years of training compressed into pure muscle memory. First, stop the bleeding. She ripped open her trauma kit, pulled out gauze, applied direct pressure to the arm wound. The trooper's eyes fluttered open. "Stay still," Margaret said, her voice calm, commanding. "I'm a nurse. You're going to be okay, but you need to stay still." "Can't feel my legs," Jessica whispered. Margaret's heart sank. Spinal injury. Possible paralysis. Moving her was a risk, but staying in a leaking, smoking vehicle was a death sentence. "I need you to trust me," Margaret said. "I'm going to stabilize your neck, then get you out. It's going to hurt." Jessica's eyes widened with fear. My daughter. Emma. She's 3. Margaret paused. Looked at this young woman, a mother, just trying to do her job, now fighting for her life on a dark highway. "Then we're going to make sure you get home to Emma," Margaret said firmly. "I promise you." She improvised a cervical collar from a rolled towel and duct tape. Not perfect, but enough. Then, using a technique she'd perfected in field hospitals overseas, she carefully extracted Jessica from the wreckage. 30 seconds later, the SUV's engine caught fire. Margaret dragged Jessica 20 feet away, shielding her body as the vehicle exploded behind them. The heatwave knocked them both forward. For a moment, everything was fire and noise. Then silence. Just rain. Just breathing. "You saved my life," Jessica whispered. "Not yet," Margaret replied. "Still need to keep you alive." Margaret checked her phone again. Still no signal. They were alone. Miles from anywhere. Jessica's bleeding had slowed but not stopped. She was going into shock, skin pale, breathing rapid, pupils dilated. Margaret knew the signs. She'd seen them countless times in combat zones. "Talk to me, Jessica," Margaret said, keeping pressure on the wound. "Tell me about Emma." She just started preschool," Jessica said weakly. Loves dinosaurs. Wants to be paleontologist. Good. That's good. Keep talking. Stay with me. Why did you stop? Jessica asked. Most people would have kept driving. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Because 15 years ago, someone didn't stop for me. Jessica's eyes focused slightly. What happened? I was in a convoy in Iraq. We hit an IED. My vehicle flipped. I was trapped, bleeding, and 3 cars drove past before someone finally stopped to help. A local Iraqi man risked his life pulling me out before insurgents arrived. Margaret's voice grew softer. I swore that day I'd never drive past someone who needed help. Never. Did you ever find him? That man? No. Lost track during the chaos. But I've spent 15 years trying to be him for other people. Headlights appeared in the distance. Margaret stood waving frantically. A pickup truck pulled over. A man late 50 seconds. Weathered face jumped out. Call 911! Margaret shouted. State trooper down, severe trauma. The man already had his phone out. Ambulance is 12 minutes out. She doesn't have 12 minutes, Margaret said, but we'll make it work. Richmond Memorial Hospital, 2:30 a.m. Margaret sat in the waiting room, still in her rain-soaked scrubs, dried blood on her hands. She'd refused to leave until she knew Jessica's condition. A surgeon approached Dr. Raymond Cole, Chief of Trauma Surgery. He looked exhausted. You the one who brought her in? Margaret nodded. The EMTs said you performed combat-level field care, stabilized her spine, stopped the bleeding, prevented shock. Without that, she wouldn't have made it to the hospital alive. Is she going to be okay? Dr. Cole sat down. She's stable. In surgery now. The spinal injury, we won't know the extent until she wakes up. But you gave her a fighting chance. Margaret exhaled deeply. Relief, exhaustion, emotion, all hitting at once. There's someone who wants to meet you, Dr. Cole said. A young girl appeared, maybe 3 years old. Curly brown hair, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. Beside her, an older woman who must have been Jessica's mother. Are you the angel who saved my mummy? The little girl asked. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. I'm just someone who stopped to help, sweetheart. Thank you, Jessica's mother said, voice breaking. Thank you for not driving past. Margaret knelt down to Emma's level. Your mummy is very brave, and she's going to fight really hard to come back to you. 3 days later, Margaret returned to the hospital. Jessica was awake, in recovery. The prognosis was cautiously optimistic, no permanent paralysis, but months of physical therapy ahead. You came back, Jessica said, surprised. Had to make sure you were okay, Margaret replied. And I wanted to ask you something. Your accident, do you remember what happened? Jessica's expression darkened. I was pursuing a vehicle, suspected DUI. They ran me off the road deliberately. 2 men in a black pickup. They stopped, looked at me, then drove away. Margaret's blood ran cold. Did you get a plate number? Partial. Police are investigating. Margaret pulled out her phone, showed Jessica a photo, a grainy image from 2010. A black pickup truck, partial plate visible. Is this the vehicle? Jessica stared. How? How do you have this? Because 15 years ago, this same truck ran my convoy off the road in Iraq. We thought it was insurgents. But after the investigation, we found out it was American contractors, mercenaries running illegal weapons. They were never caught. Jessica's eyes widened. Are you saying? I'm saying whoever tried to kill you that night may be connected to the people who nearly killed me 15 years ago. The room fell silent. Why would they be here? In Virginia? Margaret's jaw tightened. That's what we need to find out. Margaret didn't go to the police immediately. She couldn't. Not without proof. Instead, She did what she'd learned in the military. Investigate quietly, methodically. She contacted her old unit, pulled files from the Iraq incident, cross-referenced with Jessica's accident report, and found something chilling. The partial plate Jessica remembered matched the vehicle from Iraq, now registered to a shell company based in rural Virginia, a company connected to private military contractors operating illegally on U.S. soil. Margaret brought everything to the Virginia State Police. At first, they were skeptical. A 52-year-old nurse claiming a 5-year-old incident in Iraq was connected to a local hit and run? But then they ran the plates, checked the company, found the connections. Within a week, federal agents raided the compound. 3 arrests, weapons trafficking, conspiracy, attempted murder of a law enforcement officer. And justice finally for what happened to Margaret's convoy 15 years ago. At the press conference, the FBI credited an anonymous tip for breaking the case. Margaret watched from home, quiet, satisfied. Jessica knew the truth. 6 months later, Margaret stood at a podium in the Virginia State Police Training Academy. In front of her, 40 new recruits, young men and women preparing to serve and protect. "My name is Margaret Chen," she began. "I'm a retired Army combat medic and trauma nurse. I'm here to teach you something that might save your life, or someone else's. 6 months ago, I pulled over on a dark highway to help a state trooper who'd been run off the road. I didn't know her, didn't know if I'd be in danger, but I stopped anyway, because someone once stopped for me." She clicked to the next slide, a photo of Jessica Martinez, now recovered, back on duty. Trooper Martinez is alive today because of a split-second decision. Not just mine, but the decision of everyone in the chain of care. The man who called 911. The EMTs who stabilized her. The surgeon who operated. The physical therapists who helped her walk again. Every single person made a choice not to leave her behind. Margaret paused, looking at each young face in the room. "You're about to become police officers. You'll face danger. You'll see terrible things. And there will be moments when you have to decide, do I stop? Or do I keep going? I'm here to tell you, always stop. Always help. Always remember that every person you encounter is someone's daughter, someone's mother, someone's reason to come home. Never leave a fallen." The room erupted in applause. After the presentation, Jessica approached, now walking with only a slight limp. "You didn't have to do this," Jessica said. "Teaching here, I mean." Margaret smiled. "Yes, I did. Because if I can prevent one officer from being in the position you were in, or teach one person to stop when someone needs help, then maybe that Iraqi man who saved me will know his legacy lived on." Jessica hugged her. "Thank you. For everything. Thank you for giving me a reason to keep being that person." Today, Margaret Chen continues to teach emergency medical response at the Virginia State Police Academy. She's trained over 300 officers in combat medical care. Jessica Martinez returned to full duty and was promoted to sergeant. She now leads a task force on highway safety. And Emma? She still wants to be a paleontologist, but she also keeps a toy medical kit in her room because she wants to be like Aunt Maggie, the angel who saved her mum. The Iraqi man who saved Margaret in 2010? She never found him, but she doesn't need to, because his legacy lives in every person Margaret has helped, every officer she's trained, every life saved because someone chose to stop. That's the power of one decision, one moment, one person who refuses to drive past someone in need. If this story moved you, please share it. You never know who might need to hear it. Someone watching this right now might be the next person to stop, to help, to save a life. Be that person. And if you want more incredible true stories of courage, sacrifice, and humanity, subscribe to our channel. We share these stories every week because the world needs more heroes, even unlikely ones, dedicated to all first responders who run toward danger while others run away.